Hello world, this is Jeffrey, JJB146 Blake for Hoopa Hideout, and today I'm coming to you with an update of sorts on Roaring Moon. You see, I published my video and no one had been innovating on Roaring Moon. We hadn't seen anything new, basically since the first week that the deck had come out. Well then that very week, Azul kicks the door wide open with a list featuring Iron Hands, and frankly, it answered a lot of the problems that Roaring Moon has had. Then, the next week, Ross Cawthon goes and he places in the top 16 in Portland, and the week after that he places in the top 8 with basically the same list. So, we've had some innovation. Things are different now. So the last video that I put out, it's still relevant. You can still play Roaring Moon that way. But that's not what has been seeing play lately. So I want to give you the two new lists that you can look at, and then we'll have some more follow-up videos showing them in action. So we'll start off with Azul's list, because frankly, I like this one better, even though it's not the one that Ross has been piloting to top finishes. So in this list, we're playing 3 Roaring Moon, we're playing Moltres V, we're playing Iron Hands, and Radiant Greninja. Those are our attackers. Our utility Pokemon are Moltres V, Mew EX, and Squawkabilly. I guess Mew EX can be an attacker sometimes too, but not very frequently. So, how does it work? Well, there are a couple things that make everything possible, right? So we have the 4 copies of Professor Sada, just like we've seen in Roaring Moon lists since the beginning of the format. And to go along with the Professor Sadas, because Sada can only accelerate energy to Roaring Moon in this list, we have energy switches. Now these energy switches can move energies that Sada has accelerated from Roaring Moon onto a different Pokemon. Say water energies that accelerate with Sada can become water energies that are attached to Radiant Greninja. Similarly, you can get dark energies out of the discard with Dark Patch or with Moltres V's ability, attach them to either of your dark Pokemon. Moltres V's ability obviously attaches only to Moltres V. But then we can move the energies from there onto another Pokemon, so that we can ultimately, through a couple of energy switches, we can power up any attacker we want in just one turn. I've had many games where I successfully used this list and attacked with Radiant Greninja on turn 1. And while that's a great technique to use to get that first knockout, that first attack with whatever Pokemon you want, it doesn't have to happen on the first turn. You can use similar techniques anytime throughout the game to move energy around. And not only that, but even once it's been knocked out and we're kind of low, if not empty, on energy switches, we can use Thornton. And what Thornton will do is just simply change the Pokemon that has the energies on it to something else. So from out of nowhere, we can have an attacker powered up from just a Pokemon that was in our discard. So this is one of the best ways to power up Iron Hands if you're not using him in the very beginning of the game, because you can have Moltres acquiring energy throughout the game, and then suddenly you play Thornton, swap in Iron Hands, attach a single lightning energy, and Iron Hands is taking 2 prize turns on those low HP basics. And basically what this all centers around is fixing the major problem that Roaring Moon decks have had, which is their matchups against smaller Pokemon. Pokemon that you can't, like, you can knock out with your big damage attacks, but they can kind of peck you to death, and you just don't, you don't trade evenly, because they can just use little attackers and you end up, your big hits aren't enough because they're too big. They're not getting enough prizes. But with Iron Hands and Radiant Greninja, we can circle around that and we can disrupt their setup, take extra prizes, and accelerate the game to the pace that Roaring Moon wants to play. So those are the big changes. Obviously, we don't have cross-savers and cross-switchers. but we are playing boss, and we're playing a Palpad to get our supporters back. That's Azul's list in a nutshell. Now we're going to look at the other list we have. This is Ross Cawthon's list that he has used to place in top 8, well, top 16 and top 8, and someone else almost piloted it to a top 8 finish. They got 9th at yet another regional. So that's 3 back-to-back regionals with this list finishing in top 16 and worldwide, because that was in Europe. So here we're back up to 4 Roaring Moon. We have 2 Moltres Vs. We've brought back more Pekko, and Radiant Greninja is here, but he's not an attacker because we're only running Dark Energy. We now have a different supporter count, though. So a lot of the things we said before still apply, right? We can still Professor Sada's onto a Roaring Moon or 2, and then we can move the energy around with Energy Switch. We can, but we usually won't. Usually when you're playing Energy Switch, it's going to be to move an energy that you've got back with Dire Flame Wings from Moltres V onto a different attacker that can hit harder. That's the primary thing with the energy switches. Trekking Shoes just helps tear through the deck that much faster. We have Iono and Judge for late game, as well as Palpad to get them back. With Palpad, we can have up to 4 bosses' orders, which is a big help. And then the last innovation from Ross is really making use, and almost to the point of abuse, of his tools with pairing with Town Store. So Ross is the first one to actually do well with the list, featuring Emergency Jelly. This tool will, once you get down to the point you have only 30 HP left on a Pokemon, or anything below that, it'll heal up 150 damage. 120 damage, so you have 150 left. Then it falls off. At that point, you can make more plays. So at that point, you can, say, attach an Ancient Booster Energy Capsule to Roaring Moon that has 150. Suddenly, he now has 210. That means that you can use the Frenzied Gouging attack to take 2 complete straight-up knockouts back-to-back with the same Roaring Moon. You can also just have the Ancient Booster Energy Capsules attached elsewhere as, meaningful buffs to give Roaring Moon almost 300 HP, 290. So it can go either way, but you don't leave a Roaring Moon up with 30 HP when you have the Emergency Jelly in play. We do see fewer copies of Earthen Vessel, but that's because we draw into energy fairly well naturally with 9 copies. We're not trying to do a mix, so we don't have to select things out. And Ross has 3 copies of Professor's Research to go deeper into the deck, along with the Trekking Shoes, and then what we obviously had before with Squawkabilly and Mew EX. He can dig and get to those energies more than some other lists used to be able to, and that's pretty powerful as well. So like I say, we've been hearing descriptions of this list to sort of say that it is taken Roaring Moon from sort of a very strong Mimi deck centered around Sada into being a full-fledged deck with a broad array of supporters to give it both early game and late game potential. I actually still prefer the Iron Hands list. Part of it is because I won a league challenge with it the day that I saw it from Azul. I started practicing it, and 2 days later I won a challenge. And part of it is just, I don't feel like Ross's list goes far enough to handle the little Pokemon, the Gardevoir matchups, and some of the Lost Box matchups. The Ancient Booster Energy to give us extra HP definitely helps, because that puts us further out of range for immediate knockouts from Gardevoirs, and it also puts us out of range of a knockout from a Radiant Charizard, which has started to see a lot more play. But, like I say, I don't know that that's really enough. I kind of think that having the Iron Hands and the Greninja options present better ways to counter those decks. So, for me, I'm still going with the Iron Hands build until playing both lists kind of off and on proves me wrong. But you may see it differently. You may prefer the Ross list, or you may still prefer the Darkrai list. I think they're all good. I think they're all worth exploring. But with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up for today. We'll be back soon in the next video where we will see me winning a league challenge. And then after that, we'll see some live play with the Ross list. And then after that, we actually will come back and get the tips and tricks video that I promised. I've been working on that a little bit, but honestly, when these new lists started coming out, I wanted to see how things played out with them first so that I can incorporate all of that and play, show play from all of those different lists and include tips and tricks from each. Now with that, thank you for tuning in. This is Jeffrey, JB146 Blake, signing off.